Okay, first for this final demo, I'm gonna go and just start up the engine. I'm gonna start up the program so we can go and see it. All right, so I have three spotlights, which are the two blues from the ship because they're trying to scavenge from this ship that broke down. So then here's the other spotlight, and then I have 3 point lights, which are from each of these. And then I have a directional light, the skybox, and the planet back there are actually rotating around the scene. And then you can see that the fog works correctly, like so. And then you see the box right there. All right, so in the DX app, I have everything being initialized in the demo. And then this is how I have my graphic objects being set up that you set the material and fog, and the fog also has default parameters. And for if it's just a texture, you just have to set the texture and that's it. I have predefined floats for if there's any variables that are moving or any matrices that are going to be changed and set to a new value. These are set so then every update they're here instead of just being in the update itself. Then the world matrices. Then here are my static lights. And I just have my point lights being numbered as functions. And then set all the worlds. I register all my graphic objects to the manager. And then here are my set speeds. And then position 2 for the ship with the light goes into this movement lights for the non-static. Then I set all the eye positions for the cameras that are using the light. And then my graphic manager goes and renders everything. So I don't have any pre-made models in that demo right now, but I do have these set up for box, pyramid, and sphere. And that's what these look like right here. And then here's the sphere. In the sphere, I still didn't get the poles set up correctly, but for the model, I have three different ways you can do it. You can either do it by the pre-made model, the model name, and then also by the verts that you throw on like we did in the beginning of the class. And then also the bind vertex buffer and render meshes here for depending on if there's any meshes in the imported FBX. And this is what these look like. And then we have the skybox, which skybox is up here. For the skybox, you send in the device, pointer to the shader texture, the texture itself, and then the length of how big you want the skybox to be. And this is what the header looks like. And this is what the skybox looks like. Before a skybox, I had it set up so then it could be back faced or front faced. Just because this is now only going to be a skybox, I have this being front faced. And in my scene, my skybox does not give any light, so I didn't worry about uh, making any functions for light because it's not supposed to have it anyways. Then for the graph object for my skybox, I have it set up here. Then for the object, you just pass in these parameters. It'll go and make the skybox, delete it, and then it'll hold the information for the texture and shader texture. And also sets the world, just in case they don't set it on their own. And then for render, it sends the world and renders it. So then it can still be used with my graphic manager. And then for terrain, go here. And for terrain, you send in if it's going to have a light, and it has to be a texture light, and how I have it set up right now. You send in the device, the height map, the size of the image, and then you also go and throw in the length, max height, and then your repeatable UVs. So then in the graphics object, this information gets sent to make the terrain. And then once again, we have a pointer to the shader, makes the world identity just to be sure. And then we start setting in the uh, light components. And then my terrain model, I do not have the lighting set up correctly for the average of the face normals. I go and just compute the normal and I'll set it to that specific uh, try. And then let's see. So then, yeah, everything's being multiplied by what the length is supposed to be. So the user can change it on the fly. Well, correction. User can't change on the fly, but user can change it when they're initiating it. And then for the shader classes, we can look and see that for the ambience, diffuse, and the spectral, that they're automatically set. So then they'll have to worry about the first three parameters, but the last three they don't have to. At least to know the position. And these will be blatantly white, so if they want to go and test something out really quick, they can. For the fog parameters, that's the same thing. They can have the fog be completely blank, and the color will default to the midnight blue, which we normally used in class. So then there's all that stuff. With the color light also, we have the multiple point lights. So then in my light parameters, I have 3 of them. So then I have a function for each of the point lights. And then when I go and send the data, I add this to the data that needs to be sent. So then in the shader for color light, we can see that for light parameters for my constant buffer, that we have 2 more point lights. And then all the way down here, you can see that I'm adding the point lights 2 and 3 to be added. And that's the same thing for texture with light, my texture light. But for this one, I have spotlights. So I have spotlights 1, 2, and 3. And it's the same thing that I'm adding them down here. And then also getting it set up with the fog, which is also set up with the fog here as well. For my graphic objects, you go and send the uh, pointer to the shader and pointer to the model. And then if it's a texture, you send pointer to the texture shader, pointer to the model, and then you set the texture later. And texture light, once again, pointer to the texture shader with the light, pointer to the model, and then you set the texture later, and if it has multiple meshes or not. And for texture light, this is how I have it set up. So then set the model at the base, holds the pointer to the shader, and sets all these to default to just 0 right now. That's the eye in the world. And then set material if you have multiple meshes or have a specific mesh, you can just set it right there. And then here's to set up the fog. And for that, we can go into here and into here we can see that I have a structure for fog parameters, and I also have a buffer for it. So then in my texture light, I set up the buffer. I also go and delete it. And I set it for the vertex shader and the pixel shader. And then since I have it set up as a structure, we go and send him the parameters of the fog right here. And then mirror, I don't have a mirror on this. I did not decide to put it in here. If we go back into the DX app, as you saw before, I even have these categorized. So then create 4 shaders. I create 7 textures. How many models there are? I only have 6 models, but I reuse some models, so that's why I have so many more graphic objects. And then specifically for like the lunar object 2, we can go and get rid of this. We can run it. And it should be a fog of a midnight blue. Oh, actually, no, it won't have a fog at all because I have it set up for the max float. Which is that ship right there. So we'll go and set that back. So I have multiple lights in here for a bunch of different things. In my graphic object manager, I go and I just use a list and I push everything onto a list. And then when I go and render, I set context to each one right now. It makes the draw look a lot cleaner, and I can just throw things in there right now and not have to worry about it. I could have different lists depending on if it's needing to set context in the draw frame or not, but I didn't have it set up like that. So this is what the graphic manager looks like. So then I just go and register it here. So then in my draw scene, I set all these eye positions, which once again I could set it to the game manager and give the eye position to all these that need it. But I didn't do that. And then, so this is what it could look like. I could get rid of all this and just add this here. So then it's just 3 lines of code inside the uh, update for the graphic objects. And then down here, I have everything numbered so then I could be sure that I was deleting what I'm making new. And then releasing all the COM objects. And then on the side over here, on the right side, you can see that my ref count is 0 all the way through, that I'm deleting everything correctly. And the only thing that does not have a ref count of 0 is the device because it's not deleted yet. I'll show this one more time. And I believe that's everything. My skybox still has a little bit of a seam, and that's where all the sides are coming together at of the texture for the skybox. But it's barely there, and I got everything else fixed for it, but it's still just showing, and I tried to fix it and I couldn't fix it. But and then here's my moving object. I forget if I already showed it or not, but it's moving very slow, but the light's moving with it as well. Skybox and the planet are moving very slowly around the terrain. and then you can see the box react to the blue light that's coming towards it. You done wearing me out.